Hi everybody. I'm making this video in response to Kevin Hart's Confessions from the Heart. And I guess this will be tales of a female director. Yeah, that's what it will be. Confessions of a female director. My name is Lori. I was a student of Art Center College of Design. I was directing a package of charity videos where they wanted me to make 3 short films for less than $10,000, each 3 minutes long. It was nearly impossible, but I said I would do it because these women had postpartum depression and psychosis. After I was shooting the video on the set, one of the men, who was like over 6 feet tall, was texting all day, and 4 of the crew members asked me, could you please ask him to stop texting? One was a 60-year-old cameraman, I guess for Ridley Scott, Tony Scott. So I pulled this gentleman aside on the lunch break and very politely said to him, hey, maybe on a photo shoot you're texting, but when we are on a motion picture set and you're getting paid to be here, it might be a good idea if you just refrain from texting until the shoot's over. That man, we'll just call him E. I'd like to call him something else, but at the end of the day, we went back to the shoot, and he started yelling at me in front of 25 or 40 people that I was a cunt. Cunt, cunt, bitch, cunt. And I was just like aghast, and he said he wasn't going to bring the camera equipment back the next day. And I said, yeah, you will bring it back. We have a contract. Otherwise, you'll be liable for the whole production, which basically was me getting a lot of things donated, because this charity said they were going to use the video to educate women how to protect themselves from postpartum depression, psychosis, anxiety. And to me, that seemed good, that children would have better quality mothers. I thought, okay, I'll be helping. I was taking no fee. I was supposed to shoot 6 people in one day. The lady, who was a maniac, kept throwing in more people, that I would shoot 24 people in one day. All the people were volunteers that were going to be in front of the camera, and they all signed a waiver that I owned the footage and that it was for artistic purposes and social justice. So at the end of the day, the guy who had the misogynist meltdown, he said he wasn't going to show up the next day. This woman, who was a therapist, was like, let's just have a talk right now. And she was like, hey, Derek, why did you call Lori a cunt? What's your problem? And he's like, 'cause she is one. She's a bitch. She's a cunt. And after that, the therapist, who was getting all this work for free, was like, hey, you know, it would be a really good idea if, Lori, you would have just apologized. You really hurt Derek's feelings. I was like, apologize? He was calling me a cunt and a bitch in front of people, threatening to hold his equipment hostage. So she's like, well, can we get an apology for Derek? I was like, no, we can't. So the shoot will be tomorrow at 6 a.m. I'll shoot it myself. I don't need you, Derek. Okay, that night I went home. Oh, and also the guy who kept complaining about the texting, he was also an older 6-foot-tall man. And this is not about misogyny. This is about why women can't advance. Why just being a woman and me wanting someone not to be texting while they're getting paid to focus on shooting an important project, why that would be cause for me to not work. So I said, hey, you know, 4 people came up to me, including this gentleman right here. He said that they don't text on Tony Scott or Ridley Scott sets. And he said, I never said that. And I just quietly listened and said, well, either way, no one will be calling me a cunt or a bitch or any other words. I can operate a video camera myself, and we're shooting it tomorrow. The next morning arrived. We got to the second location. Overnight, I had hired like 6 people on Craigslist because I said, you know what, I'm just going to be like a mutiny here. These people are very unsupportive. They seem to hate women with a vision or a plan. And I've already shot 24 interviews in 8 hours. I had 4 hair and makeup people. I had wardrobe, everything. It was like a miracle that I even got that many things for this $8,000. And day 2, the lady said she would raise a fund for $50,000 to $75,000 if I would shoot a feature-length documentary, which I did then edit for her. And she's on camera saying she's going to raise this money. And after day 2, we shoot everything. Oh, the first thing the misogynist asked me in the morning was, "Hey, Lori, could you go get me a cup of coffee?" And I said, you know what? Your brilliance is not going to be needed right now. So why don't you go sit over there and I will operate the camera, which basically it was a Canon D something. So it wasn't really that hard. It wasn't a Panavision, it wasn't an Aeroflex, it wasn't anything, but it did turn out beautiful. What ended up happening was after I shot everything with these people who were maniacs, actually all the people in front of the camera were little angels. Now some of them had actually had such a severe postpartum depression, severe postpartum anxiety. Some of them couldn't sleep, wanted to sell the house, got divorced, wanted to hurt the baby, obsessed about the baby. I had medical experts, everyone. I had women, doctors, nurses, all kinds of people, but the clinical psychologist was the worst. I guess that her husband was some kind of once upon a time producer, and I don't know, whatever. She said that when she gave birth that she had postpartum depression and he ate her placenta and that brought her back to health. And I just thought, okay, whatever. I'm in California. People do all kinds of weird things here in the name of health. So she kind of looked like a shriveled up raisin. But I did make her look good in the video, and after I shot not just the 24, an additional like 10 other people, she called me and she said, we're not going to have the other 50 or 75,000. We demand you give us all the footage. And I said, what do you mean? It's not in the contract. You can't have that. She found a lawyer, and he was a lawyer for a billionaire. And I don't know what, maybe they were like buddies. He called me and said, you need to give us all the footage, and Dr. Lunatic is going to report some of the women to DFCS for being unfit mothers. And I was like, wait a minute, we asked them to be in the video. They signed a release that was 8 years ago in another country, and we asked them to be honest. And during the filming of the video, the lady said at all times, hey, listen, can you get us some more black people to be in front of the camera? We really need underserved populations to get our funders to kick in more money. And she said this like in front of tons of people, not just me. And so I made videos of those people recording the kind of racist comments she made. And so this lawyer called me back and said, and she called the people underserved populations. That was her kind of catchphrase, underserved. Like she kept saying, why do you get so many white people? Why don't you have more people of color? Why Asian? I was like, you know what? I'm not in control of who responds, who suffered from postpartum depression or psychosis. That's whoever's going to apply. So what ended up happening was, for about 2 to 3 weeks, I got threatening phone calls from this, let's call him a lawyer, quote unquote, some type of lawyer. He was probably like a friend, and they were just trying to strong arm me into giving away, I guess, hours of footage that they would now not only be letting people call me the C word, undermine me as a director. They wanted to take credit for the idea It wasn't an idea, it was a premise. I made it up and I wrote it and I started shooting it before it was ever a work for hire. It was only for educational purposes. They wanted to take my footage and not compensate me, not compensate the crew, which was the agreement. Like if it was a deferred payment, they'd have to just compensate everyone a little something equally. I thought that would be fair, except for compensating the misogynist. I had already paid him $1,000 to abuse me. This is not a tale of victims. This is a tale of why women find themselves just expressing something very normal, such as, hey, how about you stop texting and do your job? Or then, how about you just stick to the contract? So this guy, his name was like, I don't know, I'll call him Marvin, even though that's not his name. So Marvin was like, listen, I'm going to have to sue you if you don't give us all the footage. And I was like, Marvin, you can go ahead and do that, but your psychologist is planning on reporting women to the DFCS to try to get their children taken away. She did not see these women in a clinical setting. And she's really just trying to get the footage for her own selfish purposes. And I don't know what kind of all-time low your career has stooped to, that you're trying to sue volunteers on a charity production, but you are clearly lost if you're going from helping Mark Cuban to helping this panel of lunatics. So I was like, yeah, I'll go buy the Mickey Mouse Club ears right now, and any judge in the land, I'll meet you there. And so then he's like, I'm your friend. I'm trying to help you. I'm like, no, you're not my friend. You're trying to you're trying to undermine female directors having any voice, any power, any authority, and you're trying to undermine me to be compensated for work I was promised. So I ended up getting an offer of a distribution deal for the film. The charity ladies refused to let me distribute it, refused to let me advance. It was a pro bono thing. And also, I told them, you will not report anyone because that would have been fraud, that we gave women a very clear release, and we told them to explicitly talk about how they were affected by postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, postpartum anxiety, and that we would safely